Hello, I'm Jennetta Billhimer, and I'm here with What's All the Buzz About Homeschooling. I'm going to be talking today with Kathleen Smith, and I'm so excited to talk with her. She is an amazing wealth of information and experience. Today, she's going to be talking about facing and taming the discipline monster. With homeschooling, have you ever wondered if it's possible for you to homeschool? And Kathleen Smith is the mother of 12, so she knows a few things about this topic, I'm sure. She has taught all of her children at home. She was born and raised in North Dakota. She attended Ricks College and Utah State University. She earned an associate's and bachelor's degrees in music education and music therapy. She and her husband, Steve, live on a farm where they are raising cows, chickens, pigs, and a host of other animals. As an educator, she understands the requirements and expectations of the education system. And, as a mother, she has experienced a lot of difficulty with educating from home. She's taught many homeschooling mothers over the years and helped them to find greater joy, as I'm sure that she has grown so much in her experience, and I know that she's helped a lot of mothers. She's finds a lot of satisfaction, though, in this most challenging job, she says, and she has over 30 years of experience working with children, parents, and education. So we're really in for a treat today. So Kathleen, let's just get started. What are some easy things to that maybe we can remember as we're for those who are starting out homeschooling, maybe for motivating children to cooperate? Because how do you do that? How do you manage, especially how do you manage 12 children?
Well, most people don't have to deal with 12 children. They just have to deal with 1 or 2, maybe 3. And I would say that if you can figure it out for 1, you can figure it out for as many as you need. So I try to focus on just the 1 and understanding, your one-to-one relationship with each child. So a simple way to look at it is I like to think of a ship. So if you're running a homeschool, it's a little bit like a ship. And on the ship, you have a captain and you have the crew. Now, on a ship, if you have a captain and a crew, the captain legally is the law. He decides who stays and who goes, who lives and who dies, basically. And that's pretty harsh on, for instance, like a pirate ship or something. But I like to think of my home as a ship because the mom or the dad, the parents, have to have that sort of strong feeling of their own importance in the ship. And if they don't have that, then you're going to have mutiny. And that's where we get into the basics of discipline, one-on-one discipline with your children. So if we go back to the basics of discipline, the word discipline actually it comes from the word disciple, meaning to follow. So what we're actually trying to do is to teach our children to follow us. So as far as my school is concerned, I think of discipline not in terms of punishment, but in terms of how can I help my children to follow me. So we start out with that good, strong sense of I am the leader. And from there, I teach my children that number one, it's their responsibility to educate themselves. It's not my job to give them their education. It's my job to facilitate their education, but they are ultimately responsible. So as the captain of my ship, I would sit my children down and say, okay, everybody, I want you to know that as the captain, I'm going to direct things, but it's your responsibility to see to it that your job gets done. And it's your responsibility to educate yourself. I will give you the tools. I will give you the background and the facilities and make it possible. I will feed you. I will clothe you. I will shelter you. And I will, make sure everything is clean and ready for you. But then it's your job to learn it. Now that sounds great if you tell children it's your job to learn, but then the next thing is to, like you said, motivate them to do that. Now, if you start when the children are very, very, very young, it's really easy to do this because children love to imitate. So what I teach parents is that if you are doing it, excuse me, your children will want to do it. And all you have to do is let them. So, for instance, if I go in the kitchen and I'm cooking something and my child says, I want to do that too, then I bite the bullet, I get a chair and I get them up to the counter and I let them do it with me. If I want them to do art, I get out a canvas and I start painting or I start drawing, and my child sitting next to me wants to do it too. So I get out a piece of paper for them. I do it, they do it. That's how you start teaching them how to educate themselves, is they watch you, you do it, and then they do it with you. Now, when you go into something like reading, which I always begin with my youngest children, I teach them to read. But I don't start by teaching them to read. I start by reading to them. So if I read, then I read to my children. And every day in my homeschool, I would pick a book that I love, and I would read it out loud, maybe a chapter a day, to my children so they could see, I love this book, we read this book, and I'm going to read this to you to give you an idea of what it feels like to read a really great book. And we've read, I don't know, probably dozens of books together as a family. And they have those memories of the stories that we read together. That's what taught them a love of reading. Okay, once I've instilled that love of reading, we read every day and I read to them, then I teach them to read. And I would just open up the phonics book and every day we would do a short lesson and I would teach them to read. But once they know how to read, then I make sure they know that it's their job to read. And it's my job to make the atmosphere possible for them to read. So we remove distractions during the day. And so, that's kind of a big summary of how I would begin, kind of the philosophy behind it, of allowing children to learn, being an example of learning, teaching them by example, allowing them to be alongside me if I'm doing something or learning something, or practicing something, and also allowing them to be curious and make messes. One of the biggest problems I find with women who are trying to do homeschool is they feel like the mess is the enemy. And that's easy to do because as women, we want our homes to be clean. And to me, I look at it more like a pump. So if you have a pump, the pump has to go in and then it goes out. It has to go forward, it has to go back. And that's the concept of a pump. It's the back and the forth, or the up and the down. And that's what a home is like. So me as the mom, my job is to make sure that things get cleaned out and straightened up and ready and clean. And it's their job as children to take that clean space and to create something, to make something, even if it's just a mess. They have created that out of their raw materials that they find around them. And very often mothers get frustrated with that concept. But to me, that is the concept of homeschool. I create the clean slate and they fill it up with whatever they have or whatever they desire. And I'm always there saying, what do you want? What do you like? What would you like to learn something more about? We go to the library, we get lots of books, we get lots and lots of books, I mean, stacks of books, until they just have dozens of things and ideas. You know, to me, homeschool is all about the ideas. What can you do? What do you like to do? How can I facilitate that? So for instance, if I have a child and they're curious about gardening, for instance, I would get a ton of books first, and then I would get a bunch of raw materials and say, go for it, go plant something, go try something and do it yourself. And I'll be there to watch and to kind of supervise, but not to push or not to say, I'm going to give you this assignment about gardening. You know, that's too much work for me. I want to give them the materials, give them the information, and then let them try it. So I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying, what a wonderful way to facilitate the love of learning by getting them the books and helping them to have, you know, the resources, and so that in the future then they'll know where to go when they want to learn about something like gardening or fixing a car or.
So I believe that curiosity is your absolute best friend. So if you can teach your children to be curious and then facilitate the curiosity, you've now motivated them to learn without actually bribing them into doing a lesson that you think is important for them. If you just feed their curiosity, you're going to allow them to educate themselves. Now, if my child is interested in, for instance, I had a young man, my young boy, he was probably only 10, and he was interested in blacksmithing. So he went to the library and he got a book on all these old ancient crafts and started studying it. And, you know, in order to study that stuff, he had to be able to read, and he had to read big words, and he had to get smarter to be able to learn all of that. And the next thing I know, he's out in the backyard building his own little forge to do blacksmithing. And he did it. And today, this young man is a construction manager that does blacksmithing on the side and actually sells things that he forges. So, you know, he learned a skill, but it also helped him to grow in every possible way, not just the one way. We tend to feel, you know, because of the education system, that we have to give them this class and this class and this class and this class and put it all together for them. But you don't, you really don't. What you have to do is you have to ignite their curiosity in something, and that will blossom into every other discipline that they'll need in order to be good at that one thing. So in order to be good at blacksmithing, he had to learn to read and read well. He had to understand those big words. He had to be able to work with his hands. He had to be able to work with people. He had to call people to say, can I buy your anvil? And, you know, he developed a ton of skills because of that one skill. And when children are motivated by curiosity, then they don't need any other reward than that. Now, I always made sure that they knew how to read. So every day when they were very young, we did those reading lessons, and I sat down with them. But I promised that we were going to talk about discipline and how important that is. And that's why I began with the ship. And I just felt like it was important to kind of give the overview of what homeschool looks like. But basically, the big monster of homeschool is discipline. It feels like to get them to do their lessons is the hardest thing ever. And so there are just a couple of really important principles to learn about discipline. And to me, the first and most important one is never, ever punish a child, but always, always, always reward them for what they do good. So that's my motto: never punish, always reward. However, children don't always do what they're supposed to do. So then there's that time when you want them to do the right thing, but they've done something that you find unacceptable and unhelpful and sometimes even dangerous. And so there's, everybody feels this need to punish or to give them a consequence for that. And this can be death to your homeschool. If you start punishing your child, especially around school, what it does is it teaches them to hate learning. And so you must not do that. So above all, refrain from punishment. But what do you do is the question. So to face this monster of discipline, the answer is to be two things. As a mom, you can be two things. You can be a lawyer and a judge. Okay? You're not going to be the policeman. You're not going to be a jailer. You're not going to be God and punish them. You're going to be a good lawyer and a good judge. Those two things. So let's say, for example, you've got an incident where you're trying to do school and it erupts into a fight between two children. Like, yeah, that might happen every day if you're doing homeschool, or a fight between you and a child or something of that nature, where the child is belligerent, they're upset, they're angry, words happen, sometimes a little violence happens.
Because that's family life. You're learning how to live together, right? So that's going to be part of it.
So what I found to be very helpful was to stop life when that happens. When that happens, we just push a pause button and stop and pull everybody aside and just hold court. Nice and calmly. I'm the judge and I can be the attorney as well, but we're going to hold court. We're going to sit people down and we're going to talk about what just happened. So I'm going to say, okay, Johnny, what did you do? And he's going to tell me from his side. And I don't interrupt. I let him tell his side of the story. And then I'm going to say, okay, Mary, what did you do? And she's going to tell me her side, why she did it, what happened. And after I hear both sides, and that's my lawyer talking, now I'm going to be the judge. And I'm going to say, okay, Johnny, this was not a right thing for you to do. Say you're sorry to Mary. And he says he is sorry. Then Mary, that was not the right thing for you to do. Say you're sorry. And then she says she's sorry. And at that point, my job is done. I can have them give them a hug. But once I've told them they've each had the chance to share what has happened, and each has admitted what they've done wrong and have said they're sorry, my job is done. That is discipline, where you teach them what they've done wrong and that they don't want to do it again. That's all you have to do. Because when somebody does something wrong, that is punishment enough, because you feel it. We all know that. If I do something wrong, I feel it. That's all the punishment that there is. We don't have to inflict one more. That just puts us in between them and God, and it makes us the enemy. Then they want to fight us. Instead, just stay out of the way, be a judge, acknowledge, recognize, and then wipe the slate clean. Then act like nothing ever happened, start over, go back to what you were doing in your school or wherever you were at. That is the big discipline monster.
And so then as the mother, you've taken responsibility for your part. You help them to work it out, and then you teach them, and you've done what you need to do, and then you leave the rest to their own conscience, and they know what they've done. It doesn't. Right. So you're saying it doesn't necessarily do any. It doesn't necessarily do any good to just send them to their. Do you ever send them to their rooms or anything like that?
No,
like
never send them to their room. No. I would just separate the parties if they were fighting, and make sure that I was in a calm place, because I'm only the judge. I don't have to. I'm not a part of the fight unless I make myself a part of it. So that's a big rule. I don't make myself a part of the fight. I just look at it objectively and say, what happened here? And I let them each give their part of the story. That's so important. You have to be a good lawyer and let them tell their side of the story. And
They
then
need to be heard.
as the judge, you can say, well, you aren't really telling the truth because I watched this happen, and then you can, you can correct them, but not punish them. So if you just correct and you just teach, then you let their own feelings be the punishment. Because when you hurt somebody, you do something that's not right, your punishment is how you feel, and that's enough. It's enough. And so we don't need to add to that, because when you add to that, then you make yourself culpable. Then you've done something that you shouldn't do, and then you feel bad. Parents don't like to discipline because today discipline means punish, but it doesn't feel good to do that. So I'm here to say that it works. It works for children to be the lawyer and the judge and to hold court and to do it very objectively, and then to wipe the slate clean and let them go on their way without punishment. They'll be happier, you'll be happier. They won't want to do that again. I promise you, if you've held court about something, they will avoid that at all costs. They don't want to have that happen again. They want to have a clear conscience. That feels so good to them that when you call them on the carpet like that as a judge, it feels so much like the judgment day, that their little soul just says, oh, that's the worst thing ever. And they don't want it, and they will avoid it. I promise you, it works. It works. I've been doing it for more than 20 years, and it works. So I didn't have issues that were unresolved in my school, and discipline issues. Now, I have a website, and it's called wildrosemusic.com. And on there's a heading called Neshamah. And under the Neshamah heading, and we can put a link here in the description, but under the Neshamah heading, there are several of my articles that talk about homeschool and discipline. One is 12 points to remember about homeschool. One is how to succeed at homeschool. One is called Let Them Fly. One is called 21 Things to Do to Keep Up Around. And I've got lots of other articles in there that are about mothering and lots of different things. And so, what I've given you today is just a brief description and some of my philosophy about how it works. But I would say the most important thing about discipline is to refrain from punishing, because then you don't have to feel bad. And if you just did that, you just encourage your children to repent of their bad behavior and stop doing it and apologize, and did not punish them, you would just have so much happier home, because you would be happier. You would stop fighting that battle of trying to be God and give punishment, because it's not your job. When you do God's job and not your job, then it hurts you, and that is painful. I've spent many hours in my bedroom on my bed weeping because I had punished a child. And I never punished very harshly, but it was enough that I felt so bad that I just couldn't function, and I couldn't live with that. And that's what came out of it, is I understood that it wasn't my job to punish. It was just my job to teach them how to repent when they had done something wrong. So I have to be a good judge and teach them what is right, what is wrong, who was in the wrong in this and who was in the wrong in that. And most of the time they punish each other. One person hits one person, the other person hits back. Now they've both been punished. They don't need more than that. They just need to know why it happened and how to avoid it, and be sorry that it happened at all, and then promise not to do it again. And they won't. They really won't. It's miraculous. I was amazed at how well it works, and I love it. And from that moment on, I loved my homeschool. Before then, it was a battle every day. After that, I was able to get through it much, much easier, because I could stay happy.
And you don't feel like you're having to control everything. You're just doing your part and being there for them, and then letting them learn their own lessons.
Right. Now, when it comes to
It's genius.
not controlling, that's a big deal because so many parents want to make their kids do their lessons. But I've discovered that one of the best methods for dealing with children where getting their lessons done or concerned is to use their own tactics. And one of the strongest tactics that children use is whining. They repeat, and whine and whine and whine and whine until you give in. So you turn it back on them and you do that back. You just say, please get up now. Now, it's time to get up. It's time to get up. We're getting up now. Okay, it's time to get up. And you just pleasantly and kindly nag, 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 nag until they do it. You never get angry because then that goes over the top. But if you whine and nag at them pleasantly, they will do anything to stop you. They'll get up to stop you from just pleasantly saying, it's time to get up. It's time to do school. Let's go. Come on, right now. Okay, do it. Yes, do it, do it, do it.
And they know that they're not getting the best of you because you're still happy. They're not affecting you, it sounds like.
Right. Yeah.
And
so it's very important to keep that up. Uh-oh, my computer.
Uh-oh. It looks like we may have lost Kathleen here.
Okay, so yeah, there's just a lot that you can do to help and maintain your feeling of just being happy. And that's probably the most important thing to do when you're doing homeschool, is to make sure that you're happy and that you keep that at that level and just insist and insist and insist. The first time you do it, it might take 10 times repetition, but the second time you do it, they'll be like, they'll be on it. They'll know you're not going to give up. And once they know you're not going to give up, you're just like an alarm clock. They're like, I'm going to hit that snooze button right away, and so they'll do whatever it is to get you to be quiet. And that's good. Then you just get that working relationship. And as a mom, you need that. You need them to be able to just get the signal that when you start talking and saying, I'd like you to do this now, you really mean it. And you let them know you mean it by not giving up, just like children do. If they want ice cream, they're like, Mom, can I have ice cream? Can I have ice cream? Can I have it now? Mom, can I have ice cream? Please, can I have ice cream? Please, please, please. And if they do that for 5 minutes, you'll be like, fine, go get ice cream. Just watch your children do that. If you use that with them, if there's something you want them to do, just keep on insisting, keep on asking, always be polite. You don't have to get rude or mean, just politely, continuously ask, and you'll be surprised at the results. So those are two pretty easy things to do. So.
I've noticed that if I say I'm not going to say yes, and usually they know that I'm not going to, it's not going to work to keep begging, and that I don't like begging. So so hopefully but sometimes I do have to say I'm not going to say yes, because they still stay hopeful sometimes.
And you have to be the same way. You just have to stay hopeful that they're going to give in if you keep insisting on what you want. So when you turn the tide that way and turn the tables on them, they're a little surprised, but it works. I guarantee it works. And the younger you start, the better.
It sounds like what you're saying also is that that you don't let them get the best of you, because if they learn that they can get the best of you and that you are going to lose your temper, that really
you're not consistent.
It's scary for them sometimes, I think, too, even if they're trying to get your goat.
Right.
But if you do that, you just fall in their eyes, and you lose
Yeah,
power, I
right.
guess, too. Just I don't know if power is the right word. But
Respect.
you lose your own
Mhm.
personal power when you
Yeah,
use your patience with anybody.
right. That's very, very true. So in one of my articles, I talk about a principle called kicking the horse, and it basically has to do with horse training. And I'm not kicking a horse like hurting a horse, but I am backing the horse up, and that's pretty much what you have to do with children. So in that article on how to succeed at home school, I talk a little bit more in depth about that. And that's one of the really big, important parts of discipline with children. It's pretty much having the agreement with them that they are number two and you are number one, at least right now during the homeschool. So what you
You're the
say goes.
leader.
Yeah, you're the
And
leader, you're the
like you do
captain
with
of
the
the ship.
horse,
Uh-huh.
you have to show
And
who's the boss.
yeah, they have to know that you will not back up. You will not give in. Like you said, they're not going to get your goat. You're not going to give up. You're going to keep on doing this. And the big part of this is really just learning how to let them gently know that you hold the keys and the reins and the pantry and the kitchen and the bed and the bedroom and the bedding and the food and the clothes and the shelter all in your hand. It's all yours. And you give it to them. So you teach them this principle. You teach them that all this is what you give them. And all you're asking in return is that they do these little things. And you will be fair and you will be kind, but you do ask that they do these few things in return for what you're giving them, which is everything. And
And
when
so
you,
what does that look like? So say that they won't do the chores around the house that you are asking
uh,
them to do.
well, I don't confront it during chore time. What we would do it is we would have a family meeting during a time when everybody's fine. I'm not asking anything, but we have a family meeting where we talk about this and where they understand the principle that mom and dad own everything and we're giving them to you, but in return, you're going to give us a few things. Now, if you talk about this principle that they get everything from you and you're just asking for a few little things in return, get them to agree to it. and and
During a
and you
family
ask them,
council.
yeah, you say, are you willing to do this? And we'll work with you. We'll take discussion. If you don't feel like we're being fair, we'll talk to you about it. But if this is okay, if it's okay to ask you to do these few chores and these few lessons in return for food, clothing, shelter, and every good thing, then we have an agreement. We can board the ship. Now, if you're not willing to make this agreement, then we can't really board the ship together because you're in mutiny. And so we can't move forward. We really can't have a home if you're not willing to acknowledge that I'm the captain and I have the keys to everything. And I'm asking you to do your part. Now, most children, all children are willing to just say, well, yeah, that sounds fair,
They
and
want to be
agree to
good.
it.
They want
Right.
to.
Yeah. So you get them to agree. And then when it's chore time and you insist and insist and insist and they balk at you, then you remind them. And if they continue to balk and become belligerent, then you remind them strongly that they made this agreement.
And
And
they
then you
agree
go
to
back.
it.
Yeah, they agree to
They
it.
did. And usually when
And
someone agrees to something, then
yeah.
they
And
agree to it, they'll
and
stay
say,
in
okay,
agreement.
so you agreed to this. And so if you're backing out of the agreement, then you kind of have to get out of the boat, and let them know how serious it is. So you're not really addressing the chores at that point. If they're balking at you, you're addressing the fact that they're in mutiny on the ship. And that is like all bargains are broken. And then you're like, okay, well then there is no food, there is no clothing, there is no shelter. if you're in mutiny, then this is what has to happen. You can't be on the ship anymore.
So I'm
And
just
when they
curious.
understand that, then they're like, oh, well, I guess I better just do the chore because otherwise I won't have anything. They realize it.
With all of your 12 children, has anyone ever chosen, the extreme?
Once I had to put my little boy out on the porch and let him know that that's what you got, is right there. And it took him, I don't know, maybe 5 minutes, and he was back in the house ready to do his lessons. And I never had a moment's trouble with him after that. Not one moment. But him once, and then one other child, my youngest child. Now, I have children who are on the autism spectrum, so this also works for them. They understand if you teach them the law, if you teach them that balance, if you teach them that this is how it has to happen in a ship. I'm not making this up. This is how it works. I've got everything, and I'm going to give it to you if you will do these little things. I'm not asking too much. If you think I am, let's talk about it. But if you don't, and if you agree to it, then just do it, and then we'll all be happy.
Well, what about if they're teenagers and they're like, okay, fine.
You do it when they're young so that you don't have this battle when they're a teenager. But if you happen to have a teenager, then you let them know that that's really how it works. But at the teenage age, then what you need to do is start talking to them about what they think is fair. And if they're a teenager and they agree on what's fair, then it's not a question of you telling them to do stuff that they don't want to do. They've already agreed that it's fair. So they are not going to argue with that. They'll just be like, oh yeah, you're right. And they might not like it at the moment, but they'll do it. I love my teenagers, and I have not had a moment's trouble with them. They don't have a curfew. I never have grounded them. I never tell them where they can and cannot go, or what they can and cannot do. And I have not had any problem teenagers out of 12. Is that weird or what?
Those are great odds.
And it's because I don't punish them. I simply let them know that I love them and I care about them, and I just have a certain few things that I ask of them. And beyond that, and we discussed the fairness of it, beyond that, I don't ask. I don't insist on them doing stupid things just because I'm paranoid,
And it sounds like you've kept the relationships intact while homeschooling, and that they're flourishing. And I think that this is something that a lot of people worry about, that the relationship aspect between themselves and their children. And so that's one of the fears that they have about homeschooling. They're just not sure what that.
Well, you can definitely destroy your relationships if you are in there with a big baseball bat and forcing them to do lessons every day. But if you take this approach and you let curiosity be your guide, and you never punish, and you have this agreement about the ship and who leader, and you make the agreement about what can be expected of each other, then you just function under that law, and it works. It works, and it's simple, and it's easiest for you. Then you can just be a good judge and a lawyer when you need to be, but then you step back and get out of the way and let them live their lives and move forward, because children are naturally curious if you don't beat it out of them. And you beat it out of them by making them do everything you think you need them to do. And that's not how parenting flourishes. Parenting flourishes when you do your job, you let them do their job, and together you work on the things that need to be done together. Like you clean up, or together you clean up, and together you mess up. Together you do school, and together you play, and so it's not a battle between you and your kids.
It just sounds like it's a wonderful place in your home, and that you're really able to make this all work with these principles in your own home, in your own homeschool, your own learning together.
Yeah, I've loved it. So anyway, I go ahead and point people to that website of wildrosemusic.com,
All
and
right.
under the Neshamah heading, they'll find all these articles that I've written about motherhood and homeschool, and lots of other things, forgiveness and some other articles, but they're just good for helping a mom or a parent to feel confident doing a school without feeling like they have to be their children's enemy. So
It sounds like it's a wonderful resource, your website. And so I encourage everyone to go there and to learn more from Kathleen, from her articles. And then also, are you available as a mentor if somebody wanted to get into contact with you? And
yes, I am. And I have a Facebook page where you could contact me. You could personal message me there on my Facebook page. It's called The ABCs of Health, Wealth, and Happiness. And I've written a book that's called that. And you can get it there. But the book talks about some of these principles as well. But on the page, on that Facebook page, I posted a lot of the articles and the video and the different things that I've doing as far as research goes lately about personal development, about personal health, about psychological health, about just becoming the best person you can be, because that to me is the key to a really successful school.
well, so many fascinating things that we've been able to hear about today from you, Kathleen, and I'm excited to go and look at your website and read your articles. And I just encourage everybody else to do that too. If there's been anything that has piqued your interest, and I just really enjoyed having you here, Kathleen. Thank you so much for joining us and talking about your experience with homeschooling.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yes, and so get into contact with Kathleen if you would like somebody to hold your hand a little bit during this process, or a lot. I know that she is a wonderful resource. And thank you again, Kathleen, so much for being here with us today.
Okay, thank you. Have a great day.
You too.